Hello everyone and welcome to another Pokemon Pocket video. Today we're going to be looking at a huge meta development within the competitive tournament scene, which will no doubt have ripples onto your average ladder game, as these tournaments are wont to do. A tournament we're going to be looking at, to no one's surprise once again, is Ursuday's weekly tournament, where we've seen some huge decks kind of come out of nowhere, and some cards that people didn't rate too much when the new mini set launched actually kind of popping off. And it's all to do with this sort of cycling through the meta. Recently we saw Gyarados really pop off, and then everyone jump on that fact and try and prey on the weakness that is, well, they have to run Magikarp, for example. So we see an uptick in sniper decks, for example, you know, the likes of Zebstrika, Hitmonlee, so on and so on. We had the Golem deck come out of that, I believe won the one last week as well. And now we're seeing even further developments as decks get greedier and greedier with the popularity of Druddigon, which means, oh, well, if my opponent's going to play Druddigon and go slow, well, I can go slow as well then and both get the things online. This has led to a slight development of aggro decks coming back and even being able to hit through Druddigon and really pile the pressure on. So let's take a look. Just a little note, the top 32 of the tournament has not happened yet as of recording of this video. This is, I think it's due to start in an hour. So we'll be able to find out the top 20, the top 32 sort of outcome a little bit after the fact, and we'll have a look at that a little bit later, and maybe on stream this week. However, just look at these top 32 tells a pretty cool story. So just to give you guys the heads up on the rules, there appears to have been 10 rounds overall. It is single deck best of 3, and Swiss format, of course, hence the 10 rounds. So let's just start it off at the top. Pretty cool deck. A lot of discussion was had. Is Aerodactyl EX the worst EX in the mini set, or the worst EX, you know, maybe full stop? Is it just unplayable? Is it bad? We've heard all this, yet, as I often do like to talk about with Pokemon, well, in this game, there's a lot of playable things. A lot of things can be good in situations, they can be bad in situations, and nothing really feels that unplayable outside of a very few amount of cards. Rhydon, I'm looking at you, my friend. So let's take a look. Holland Mentor, Argentina here, 10-0, 63%. Oh, sorry, opponent win rate 63%, 100% win rate, of course. That's how 10-0 works. I'm just reading numbers. But look at this, Aerodactyl EX Primeape. Let's take a look at the list. I'm excited for this one because I believe, yes, it's the new Primeape, the Mythical Primeape. And I was playing this a few days ago, and a lot of people ask me, oh, well, isn't the previous Primeape just better? And the thing is, cards are not often just better or worse. They just have different uses. And the big payoff here with this Primeape is it costs 1 energy to attack. It's huge. And they are running a 1-1 Mankey. I'm not sure whether there's like good reason for this. Whether they maybe for some reason only have one of these Mankeys, like one of the new ones. However, the flip a coin, if tails the attack does nothing, but if heads do 50, I'm a bit of a fan. The only thing you have to worry about is if 50 is a bit of a scary number in any given meta. However, those Mankeys are done. It's not the promo Mankey that we've seen because you don't want to self-damage with this deck. The Primeape, of course, 80 health, deal 50 for 1, and it's 1 retreat. Very, very nice Pokemon, very aggressive. You commit 1 energy to your Mankey, and your Mankey and Primeape's done for the game, right? Unless, okay, you might retreat without X speed or whatever, but we'll talk about that later. But really, you've just 1 energy, and it can hit for 50. It 2-shots a Druddigon without any heals. That's really strong as well. Very clean kills on the Druddigon. Next up, of course, we have the Aerodactyl EX. A lot of people were very hype on this ability. I was pretty hype on it when it was initially announced. However, it's not as strong as it looks because it is only the active slot. However, it's still pretty useful, right? It can come in handy, but I would say the real strength of this Pokemon is it's very similar to Starmie EX in stats, and people say that card's busted. It's got 140 health, so a bit more. It does only do 80, so it's out of range of like one-tapping a Druddigon with Giovanni. But it does have this ability, which is really strong. 1 cost retreat, quite strong as well. The downside, of course, of Aerodactyl is it requires its fossil to then, you know, be used. And the problem with that is that you might think, oh, well, that's good because you're going to get your Mankeys, your Hitmonlee, your Marshadow more consistently. However, the problem is you can't like force a draw on the fossil because Pokeball doesn't work on it. So that can be a little bit tough. However, Aerodactyl EX is just a good Pokemon. 140 health, 2 energy, deal 80. And it's only 1 retreat. Very tanky, has its ability as an upside, and it can just plow through certain teams if you're fast enough. So very, very strong overall. And I think a big surprise that this is strong based on the initial feelings after the mini set launched. Next up is Marshadow. Marshadow, again, another Pokemon a lot of people are hyping. I love the revenge, I was going to say ability, attack, but I love the style of the attack is probably better here. It's pretty strong, however, its downside, from what I've seen of it, is it's too energy intensive. It's too energy to deal 100 damage and then it probably gets knocked out, right? Which is not the best overall. However, again, in this list, with Hitmonlee as well, it's a very low energy list, which means you can afford to put the energy on the Marshadow. Because there's only Aerodactyl Marshadow that need 2. The others need 1 energy and it's done all game. So this is the real strength, and I think something that players still don't put enough value on is energy requirements. Having your deck use its energy well is extremely important. A lot of people and a lot of players I've talked to are just, oh, isn't this just better than that? It's like, well, they're judging it based on like damage a Pokemon does or health a Pokemon has, and it's like, but its attack is a whole 1 extra energy, which is it's like a 1 extra turn worth of resources, which is huge. And it's not to say high energy attacks aren't good, it's just something you have to bear in mind when building your deck. And then, of course, finally, we have Hitmonlee. It's there to kick Magikarps in the face, let's be honest. It is good at finishing off certain Pokemon as well. If Marshadow can hit for 100 or Aerodactyl hits for 80, and then they retreat, Hitmonlee exists to like kick them into the bench. That's pretty strong. And then the build up here, double Sabrina, 1 Giovanni, 2 Professor, 2 Pokeball, no surprise. X Speed's in there, no Leaf because everything is retreat 1, so there's no real reason to run Leaf unless you wanted even more cheap retreat options, which you don't. And then, of course, the 2 Old Ambers. So really nice list there. I'm going to be playing this on stream, or at least some kind of variation of this on stream this week to test it out. I did make something close to this actually a few days ago, so I'm glad to see it doing really well. But yeah, really cool list playing that Aerodactyl. Next up, I do just want to draw your attention to something I thought was going to be the case here. I was intending to play in this tournament, but I'm not going to lie. I signed up, did my deck list, and then started playing Marvel Rivals and missed checking. You know, some of you may know the pain of Marvel Rivals stealing away your time. But Celebi and Executor decks I thought were going to do well because I felt like a lot of people were going to lean on, say, Golem because it did well last week. And I don't think Golem is as good as people think it is. Even though I love the deck, I love Golem in general. But I think that sort of deck is good when you aren't expecting it. I think a lot of the power came from people not knowing it existed, basically. Whereas when people are ready for it, it changes everything. So we see here, currently second in Swiss with 901 score, so 1 tie as well, apparently. Is this Executor and Celebi list. So if we take a look at this, it's not really how I build this. They've gone for the aggressive Execute, the 2 Executor EX, 2 Celebi, 2 Superior, but with just 1 Snivy, and then your mix of trainer cards, of course. I prefer to build in the new Executors as well and only play 1 Celebi. I don't like being all in on the Celebi. That feels like something you rely on your Executors and Superiors and then go in with the Celebi at the end. However, again, lists like these are going to be doing pretty well. And we can see second, we've got 1 7th. We'll look at these lists in a second, but like 11th. Is there any more? So that's top 32. There's more dotted around as well. But I did think Celebi at least had the ability to make it. I think this one is, 1 Executor and going for the double Celebi. I still think people aren't exploring the Mythical Executor for some reason. I think it's very, very good, and it shocks me that more people aren't playing it. But still, of course, you know, people can play what they like. So it's that 4 in the top 32, which isn't too bad. And I think leaning on the Executors to get work done was really good. Next up, of course, we can check out, guess what? Mewtwo and Gardevoir in the tournament, as they probably will be till the end of time at this point. We are seeing the one Mew in there. Some people run two. Personally, I think one's fine. And the two blues in there, which I think is something that is vital. Being able to have game against the mirror. Basically, if you run blue, you tell your opponent that they need Giovanni. It's good versus not only mirrors, but also other Mews just in general, whether it's in the mirror or in a different matchup. Because blue can make the Mew only hit for 140, so then your Mewtwo or whatever lives. So decent list, only one Mystical Slab, which is understandable, I think, if you are going to lean into the blue, because you do have to make room for these, right? You'd prefer to probably run something a little bit different, but I do like the one Giovanni, and I do like the two blue. So that's one list. Let's take a look if this one's much different. It is no blues whatsoever. Leaning to the double mythical slab. I keep saying mystical slab. Double mythical slab, the 1x speed, double Sabrina, 1 Geo, 1 leave. So a little bit of a different build here. Still only on the one Mew. But I'm a fan of including blue. I think it creates some really, really cool breakpoints. Next up, of course, we can check out the Greninja Gyarados. For those of you who watch my stream, you know probably that I'm not the most hyped on this build. I'm not that hyped on Gyarados. I feel like the only time I ever struggle versus Gyarados is if they hit a good Misty, which, sure, like I'm going to struggle against most water decks if they hit a good Misty. However, it has still been keeping up, at least to an extent. Although, with the amount of hate there is for bench at the moment, with like bench sniping, not too much of a surprise to see not as many Gyarados do so well. But this looks fairly standard to me. Nothing too crazy. I'm a little bit surprised that people aren't including a blue, just to like maybe defend the Magikarp for a turn while it has to sit there. Because obviously Magikarp has to be on the bench for one turn at least. So I'm surprised no one's just putting in blue to just say, well, unless you've got, what, Electabuzz or Lumineon, you can't really do this. So Magikarp doesn't deal with it, Zebstrika doesn't deal with it. But, hey-oh, they're in the top cut and I'm not. Next up, but as you can see actually here, if you look at this, there's one Gyarados Greninja and two, just about three in the top cut here. So not that many, considering I think a lot of people are high on the list. Here is the Charizard plus Arcanine or Charcanine or Arcazard or Cheesy-Zard, whatever you want to call it. One thing about this list, I did see a Japanese weekly tournament the other day that we watched on stream. Really cool tech. They actually played 3 Charizards, 1 normal, and the idea was they had the normal Charizard and blue in the deck, and normal Charizard deals 150. So into a Mew, or even a Mewtwo deck in general, or whatever, they can play they played the smaller non-EX Charizard instead, did the 150 attack, and then played blue. Well, played blue, then did the 150 attack, because that's how the game works. And then they were not susceptible. They basically said to their opponent, you have to play Giovanni, or my Charizard lives, and it can attack again. And 150, a lot of the time, is as good as 200. So having that option in the deck was really cool. However, this one, of course, is fairly standard. 1 Growlithe, the 2 Arcanine EX backup, 2 Charizard, 2 Moltres, and some Pokemon. And some trainer cards. Makes absolute sense to me. What else do we have here? We looked at that earlier. We can check out the first Pikachu. First of quite a few, I think. There's like 1 Pika, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, nearly 8, but it looks like 7 Pikas in the top 32. Which is quite a large number, honestly. And I think, again, this was probably just preying on the volume of Gyarados. Because if we click on this metagame, you can't see it, okay. If you look at this. Gyarados Greninja. Obviously, there are slight things that change these numbers, right? Because there's Gyarados here, there's like, Pika here, and so on, so on. But generally, this is a huge amount of the tournament submissions were Gyarados Greninja, and it ended up at sub 50% win rate, which is kind of rough, right? 48% across the board, which is not the best for the most popular deck in the tournament. So yeah, a little bit worrying. I think Gyarados Greninja was not the pick for this week because people were going in expecting it. And very similarly, if we could just have, while we're here, Golem Druddigon, like, not great, 37% win rate, even though there's like a lot of people brought it. And again, I think the deck's good when the meta isn't ready for it. But when it is, people just learn to play around it, learn to build for it, learn how to punish like the Drudagon and so on and so on. So yeah, just a quick glance at the metagame overall there. But look at these lists as we go down. We can check out the Pika. I think this is probably the most popular one. It makes sense. It's what I would call a standard Pikachu list. This forgoes the Raichu option to play the Zeb Strikers to just snipe bench, right? We've seen, you know, you can try and push things like Geodudes. You can push out even like other Drudagons on the bench. Of course, there's Magikarp. Basically, anything your opponent wants to hide away, you can get there. Zeb Striker's good at. The Dedenne is really, really strong. One of my favorite Pokemon from the new set. Super powerful having Paralyzed for cost 1. It can buy you so much time. And it's good against the legendary birds. So good in a mirror to sort of beat up on a Zapdos as an opener, whilst maybe paralyzing it. Good versus Moltres, again, beats up on the Moltres and can potentially paralyze it, slowing the ramp down in Charizard. And then we don't talk about Articuno. But yeah, really, really solid list overall. I do think potions are going to become more popular, or they should become more popular. I feel like in this metagame right now, potions are kind of clutch. So I maybe even blue as well. So I'd be surprised if we don't see more of that going forward. We do have another Aerodactyl Primeape list, but I believe... Okay, I think, yeah, slightly different. I don't understand this. I'm going to be honest. I would rather have, like... They're basically making themselves a 40 health Pokemon to deal 30, when they could have a 60 health Mankey that deals 20. Or the 50 health one that deals 50 sometimes. I don't think this is correct. I don't know. Like, is this here to just say, if you happen to start Magikarp and this Mankey goes second, they can just one-shot and win? Maybe. I don't really know. I maybe have to try it out, but regardless, it's the same overall build, right? Hitmonlee, Marshadow, 2 Aerodactyl, 2 Primeape. Get the job done. I'm looking forward to trying this out a little bit more going forward. What else do we have? We do have this list. I think this list isn't as good, personally. I think the Primeape's better, but it's basically the same list, but with Farfetchd. But my worry is, Farfetchd, although quite strong, in a world where Drudagon exists, it doesn't feel strong enough, because the Farfetchd basically sacrifices itself on a Drudagon, which is not the best. It does run 2 Sabrinas, so maybe that's the idea here, but still, I've tried Farfetchd and ended up cutting them from a lot of lists so far. Do we have anything... Oh, here we go. What is this? Oh, okay, this is an interesting list. It leans a little bit more towards what I think about Celebi, but there's no Serperior here. It's just Executors, the normal Executor, 1 Celebi, 1 Mew. So very much feels like a sort of counter sniper deck where you sort of let your Executors tank and build up the game, and then you have Celebi or Mew. You kind of go for one or the other depending on the matchup, right? If you're against, say, Electric, you probably want to go Celebi and then try and just knock out Pikas and so on. Or Zapdos. If you want to go Mew, you go with that for, you know, Mewtwo matchups, Charizard matchups, so on. So interesting list. I do think Superior and the Mythical Executor is very good though, but I may be a little bit biased. Next up, good old, I'm going to just guess, good old Blaine, right? We have 2 new Ponyta, or a Mythical, 1 Mythical Rapidash, 1 Apex Rapidash, and then Ninetales. Fairly straightforward list. Obviously, you've got the 1-on-1 here for just slight different options. Different openings are a little bit better. However, fairly straightforward. Nothing too fancy, of course. There's a 2 Blaines, 1 Geo. I'm surprised there aren't 2 Geos, but maybe they're just assuming that they'll just have the time to just play these 3 and that's it. So that's fair enough. But still, solid list. If you're still struggling for something to bring, Blaine can get it done. Here, we do have... What is this? Oh, wait, there's a few here. Okay, let's check out. I know people will be interested in this. Mewtwo, Alakazam. So it's 1 Mewtwo, 1 Sigilyph, 2 Drudagon, and 2 Alakazam. So instead of having Gardevoir to ramp, you actually just have Drudagon to buy time instead. And I'm guessing on this, it's really an Alakazam deck that plays kind of a 3rd Alakazam, if you'll give me that leeway of silly comments, because they have time to build up Alakazam, but in some matchups that are really bad for Alakazam, like the like of Executors, for example, or just, there are certain these matchups where I don't have high energy based Pokemon. The Mewtwo can sit there and be used instead. So not bad, something a little bit different. A ton of card draw, which I do like. So that's kind of interesting list itself. And then where was it? Aerodactyl Mew. This is one personally. Even though I'm glad Taurus exists as an option, I've never felt like it got to work. And obviously this has done work for the player who's piloted this, but like I was saying before, this is like a choose one kind of scenario where you've got Hitmonlee that's cheap. You're probably going to end up with Taurus or Mew in the start. And then it's 3 cost, 1 cost, 2 cost, 3 cost, 2 cost. It seems very expensive. And I guess with this deck is you pick a route and go with it based on the matchup. But this feels a little bit wishy-washy. However, I'm sure it's getting work done, as we can see. What did they go? 8-1-1. So it had a good run, but for me personally, it feels a little bit loosey-goosey. Next up here, and maybe even finally, before we take a look at the overall meta, we can look at the Raichu variation of Pika. So this is 2 Pikas, 2 Raichus, 2 Pika EX, 1 Electabuzz for the snipe. So this is something you can do, especially if you're playing Surge. Instead of running the Zebstrika, you can have the Electabuzz. And even though it's 2 energy, which is obviously twice as much as Zebstrika, no evolution required, and you have Surge. They've got the Dedenne and the 1 Zapdos. I actually quite like this list. This gives reach against things like Gyarados. If you can't snipe the Magikarp, it's not over. While still giving you options here, like Gyarados, even knocking out Druddigons, it's fine. And then you have this Electabuzz here that you can just shift the energy to. And then because Electabuzz doesn't discard, you can then like X-speed the Electabuzz out and then shift that energy again to Raichu for a knockout. So pretty cool list. If you're not going to play Zebstrika, something like this is the way to go. And then we do have, obviously in this tournament, we've got all sorts of different decks, like Flat Pidgeot over there. But if we just take a look at the metagame overall, we can see that we have Gyarados, Greninja, very popular. Although, again, I don't think, as we can see here, obviously did not perform so well. Mewtwo, Gardevoir, again, not super great either. All these decks people are used to seeing. But we are seeing all these other meta decks come into play. Like, if we actually look, it's going to be a bit difficult looking at win rate because obviously you've got number of players and number of games. But if I actually go back to there we go, share, there we go. If we look at this, we have different variations on Celebi. We have Golem Druddigon being popular, although obviously did not perform well. Multiple Pikas again, multiple, let's say, fire-based decks. But then we have like Aerodactyl and Primeape doing pretty well. We've got Scolipede and Weezing having a tough time by the looks of things. Gyarados, Starmie not doing great either. Obviously, remember, there's only so many games happening. But like Mew, Farfetchd doing okay here. What list is this? Did I miss this? Oh, it's like a slight variation. It's just 1 Taurus and more Farfetchd. Okay, I know this list. Like, that's doing okay. Let's have a little look. And these are just by popularity, but like Pidgeot, for some reason, I feel like these lists are never that good. But look, see. Yeah, this is too much messing about here, this Marshadow. I feel like this deck, obviously I'm going to favor the version I play, but I feel like this needs more card draw and less like fancy stuff. Like less Hitmonlee, less Marshadow, and just get some card draw in there instead. But still, I like Pidgeot. Yeah, there's a ton of, that's a just goal. But yeah, there's a ton of lists doing pretty well. Like the Aerodactyl we've talked about is probably the big winner, and Primeape, of course. If we go down to here, what is this? Marowak EX Primeape. Only 4 of them submitted, but still had a pretty solid win rate overall. What was the matchup here? 1 of the mythical, 1 Apex. One of everything basically, and a Marshadow in there. So even some of the older archetypes still holding up with decent records, honestly. Got Venusaur, which did terribly, which makes sense because everything's a little bit too strong for Venusaur right now. But yeah, really interesting some builds down here. Greninja Weezing doing okay. Decent thing here of Greninja. What was UK player as well? Greninja, Behem, Mew, Jinx, Taurus. This is like I am going to counter every deck in the game at some point, kind of. But again, creative list. And what did they go here? They went 5-3, not bad. 4-4, not bad for like decks you would generally name that are a little bit weaker off the cuff here. And what is this? Marowak EX Aerodactyl. 2 people submitted and went 10 and 4. And this person went 8 and 2. Marowak, Aerodactyl, Hitmonlee, Marshadow. Not bad, a red card in there as well. So yeah, really interesting developments within the meta. I expected Gyarados to fall off a bit, and we kind of saw that. I expected Golem to not be the best. I thought Celebi was going to do well, and I think the Celebi decks that have lent more towards Executor have been doing okay. And then we get the banger. We get Aerodactyl Primate rocking. So yeah, just a tournament update for you guys here. I sort of did talk a lot because I've not done one of these for a while. And I do think the meta is very interesting, constantly developing. So I'm excited for what next week's going to bring. But yeah, guys, if you want to watch these tournaments, make sure to check out Ursiday's channel, whether it's on Twitch or YouTube, and to catch up with more of these, because it's great content. It's great stuff to watch. I enjoy it, and I'm going to finish recording this and then go and watch the top 32. Thanks a lot for watching, everyone. We'll see you next time.